Hi, I'm Jeff Belanger, and welcome to another episode of Paranormal Journeys. Today we're taking you to the site of a double murder, a murder that occurred over 100 years ago. The case is still unsolved today. We're in Fall River, Massachusetts. Welcome to the Lizzie Borden House. Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. It's a popular children's rhyme. Lots of New England kids know it, but it's also a bit of an exaggeration. Mrs. Borden was killed with 18 blows to the head. Mr. Borden was killed with 11. What we're going to do is take you through the house. We'll show you the crime scene. We'll recreate some of the events that took place here, and we'll talk to some paranormal investigators who have looked into the hauntings here and see what they've found. On the morning of August 4th, 1892, it was hot and sticky in Fall River. Temperatures reached over 100 degrees. The Borden family was feeling the heat at their home at 92 2nd Street. That morning, 32-year-old Lizzie was here, as was her 70-year-old father, Fall River business mogul Andrew Borden. Lizzie's 64-year-old stepmother Abby was here, as was Bridget Sullivan, whom the Bordens referred to as Maggie because that was the name of their previous maid, the Irish immigrant domestic worker who lived in the house and worked for the Bordens. It was 11 a.m. on that fateful day that Andrew Borden came into this room to take a nap. He sat down on the couch just like this one to rest, put his head back, went to sleep, and of course never woke up. God, I'm getting a splitting headache. Just a few minutes after Mr. Borden was killed downstairs, the murderer ascended the staircase, came into here, the guest room, and hacked Mrs. Abby Borden to death right here where I'm standing. It would seem from the evidence that the Bordens knew their killers. There was no sign of struggle, no break-in, nothing stolen. The person knew their way around the house, and there were 2 dead bodies. What would ensue was the trial of the century. All signs pointed to Lizzie. But did she do it? So did Lizzie do it? They did find an axe handle down in the basement. And, another oddity, that day Lizzie burned one of her dresses. She claimed she got paint on it, so she burned it in the oven. Was the paint really blood? We'll never know for sure. Let's check out the basement. It was down here in the basement that investigators found an axe head that they believe was the murder weapon. It was found right on the other side of this brick wall. Now, the jury heard all the evidence. They deliberated for only 1 hour before reaching a not guilty verdict. It was the trial of the century back then. No one could believe how Lizzie could get away with this. She took the Bordens' money, she moved out of here, and she bought the Maplecroft mansion uptown. Definitely moving on up. So, with all the hubbub here, with all this activity, is the Lizzie Borden mansion haunted today? Tim Weisberg of Spooky Southcoast. Tim's had the opportunity to spend a lot of time here in the Lizzie Borden house. Got some really interesting EVP while he was in here last time. Tim, maybe you could start with just explaining what is EVP.
Well, EVP is electronic voice phenomena. It's where disembodied sounds will imprint themselves on a mechanical device, an electronic device. And we use digital up here a lot because you don't get the double exposure that a tape can give you. So we get some pretty clear stuff, and we know when it's talking to us.
Right, and what room are we in right now?
This is the Hosea Knowlton room. All the rooms here are named after people that figure into the case, and he was one of the prosecutors involved in the case. And this room was originally part of the guest space that was up here on the 3rd floor. Bridget's room was down the hall, and this would be where some people might come if they were staying, or they had some attic space around here too. So there was no murder here per se, but there seems to be a lot of activity here.
Interesting. And so what is the EVP that you capture?
Well, we were working with a group called Whaling City Ghosts, and their investigator was recording the audio while I was on the bed. We've had success here getting something to lift up people's legs. So we were doing that, and I asked, can you lift up my legs again? And it gave me something that was a little bit nasty. It said, why don't you go yourself?
All right. Let's hear it. We're here with Matt Moniz, also of Spooky Southcoast. Matt's had the opportunity to investigate the Borden House on numerous occasions. Matt, what did you encounter in this room?
I've encountered several things. One of the most prominent things I had happen was the camera that I had in here move. I had the camera mounted right here on top of this chest. It was focused on the bed area. It moved first at a 45-degree angle. I had a member of Whaling City Ghosts reset the camera back, tested to see whether stepping on the wire would cause it to move. That turned out to be negative. After she was done testing that, the camera then turned 90 degrees to face where she was standing. Now, as you can see, there's not much room to hide behind here.
Right.
It's not like somebody was behind the camera moving it. The only people in the room were investigators, the house psychic, and a reporter for a local magazine who witnessed everything and documented it as well. I was viewing the video outside the room and can verify that from where the rest of the wires were, nobody was touching them. But that was just the camera. I've seen legs being lifted on the bed by unseen forces. I've heard audible noises along with several other individuals in the room. Whispers, voices, grunts and growls, sound of children laughing and playing, plus a couple of other little odd things moving about here and there. You hear it, but you don't see it type of thing.
Right.
It's a pretty active room
to
compared to the rest of the house.
One of the things we're here with Christopher Balzano of Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads, here in the dining room of the Borden House, where Chris once attended a seance. Chris, can you tell us about what you experienced here?
Sure. In November of '05, I attended a seance here conducted by the psychic Jackie Barrett. And during that seance, she's a little bit different than other psychics who kind of do that thing. She invited the spirit to not enter her, but to enter someone else within the room. And there was someone sitting in the corner here who kind of volunteered, although it's questionable whether they volunteered or whether they were drafted. And the spirit of Bridget, who was the maid, although she hated the word maid and she wanted housekeeper to be said instead, supposedly came into her. And although she wouldn't say anything to the audience or to the people in the room, she did visibly change her appearance. And I've got pictures of her after the ceremony and during it. It looks like two different women. And she got very, very angry at the people that were in the room, especially Jackie. And I remember feeling that at any moment she was just going to like jump out and do something violent. So,
while filming this episode of Paranormal Journeys, we did encounter an unexplainable event. There were only 4 of us in the house that night, and while we were all in the basement, we heard the distinct voice of a young person above us in the kitchen. We all ran upstairs because we thought someone had just broken into the house, but there was no one there. In a century since the murder occurred, though the case is still unsolved, this legend won't be forgotten anytime soon. Today, the Borden House is a popular bed and breakfast and a place to tour. It's kind of a living museum. It's a step into the past when you walk into this house. People today are still having experiences all the time, all over the building. It's an important place. It's a case to remember, and it's part of the fabric of New England. For Paranormal Journeys, I'm Jeff Belanger.